Hi, this is Hal on the hot seat again, and I've come to seek to answer some more of your questions. The first question is, did God create any other life form that we know about somewhere else in the universe? Well, yes, he did. And the question says, is it possible he could have created a number of different life forms? Well, that we don't know. Certainly it's possible he could do anything. But we do know that he created a race of beings that are far superior to man. Let me read you about it from Job chapter 38, when God was asking Job some questions. In Job chapter 38, beginning with verse 4, it says, "Where were you when I laid the foundations of the earth? Tell me if you have understanding. Who set its measurements, since you know? Or who stretched the line on it? On what were its bases sunk? Who laid its cornerstone? When the morning stars sang together, and all the sons of God shouted for joy." Now, in the Hebrew, sons of God are B'nai Ha-Elohim. That title is only used in the Old Testament of angels. You see, there is a life form that the Bible calls angels that are infinitely, almost more powerful and smarter than we are. They are very high forms of life. And it's important to note here that God says that when he created the material universe and started time and space, they already existed because they watched him as he did this creative work. And they shouted for joy at the expression of God's omnipotence and omniscience and omnipresence. You see, his infinite power and infinite wisdom and knowledge were all expressed in this act of creation. And it's important to note, he says, when all the sons of God shouted for joy. There was no division. You see, all of the angels were together and rejoiced in this expression of God's great power and his beauty of his character and his creative work. But the Bible says that something happened among the angels that caused a great rebellion and division. The most beautiful, powerful, and intelligent of all of the angels is named Lucifer. And Lucifer means the shining one. He was the one that guarded the holiness of God's throne. The Bible tells us, Isaiah chapter 14, that he rebelled against God and he got proud and says, I'm going to make myself like the Most High. And I'm going to take his place. And that's when there was a great separation. And a separation between the angels of God who remained with him. The Bible says a third of the angelic creation rebelled against him and followed Lucifer, who became known by the name of the devil, which means deceiver, and Satan. Now, I believe that this is very important information because it tells us that the angels were all together when the material universe was created, and that the next strain of verses tells us something about something happening to the world, the planet Earth, because it says in verse 8 of chapter 38, "Or who enclosed the sea with doors? When bursting forth it went out like from the womb. When I made a cloud its garment, and thick darkness its swaddling band, and I placed boundaries on it, and I set a bolt and doors, and I said, Thus far you shall come, but no farther. And here shall your proud waves stop. Now, apparently, some great judgment must have taken place, because when God created the planet, it wasn't covered in chaos with water and thick clouds on it. Some great judgment took place. Apparently, that took place when there was this rebellion among the angels. And in Genesis chapter 1, it says, in beginning God created the heavens and earth. Well, that was in the first verses, chapter 38, verses 4 through 7. But then, beginning with the 8th verse, there's something that happened. And in verse 2 of Genesis, it says, and the earth was without form and void. You know, in Hebrew, the word that's translated was can either be translated was, or if there is reason in the context to believe it, to see it, it can be translated became. And I believe that's the way it should be translated. And the earth became without form and void. That's a translation of the Hebrew words tohu wa bohu. This phrase means utter chaos, something that's been thrown into complete and utter destruction and chaos. Well, we know from the character of God that He doesn't create things in utter chaos. Everything God creates is beautiful, and that it at least has reason and is put together in a way that makes sense. But this was destruction. And so in Genesis chapter 1, verse 2, it jumps forward, I believe, to that time when all the sons of God were not shouting together for joy at the beauty of God's character, but there were some who had rebelled. And the Spirit of God came back to planet Earth and brooded over this destruction and chaos. It says, and the Spirit of God hovered over the water. The Hebrew word better means brooded over with sadness about the chaos. And that's when God began not His creation of planet Earth, but His reconstruction of planet Earth. From those verses forward, there is the word asa. Bara is the word in Hebrew for creating something out of nothing. Asa and yatser are the Hebrew words for refashioning something that already existed and remaking it. And those two words are used. Yatser means to fashion the outer shape of things. Asa means to simply rearrange things to remake it. And when it says, God said, let there be light, this was the beginning of the reconstruction of the earth. Well, in my book, Satan's Alive and Well on Planet Earth, I go into this in detail, but I believe that the reason God did this is because God started an experiment in which He would demonstrate to Satan that He was righteous in condemning him and banishing him from His presence. But I won't get into that right now. That's another lesson. But I believe that certainly God has created the most powerful beings that we have any knowledge of, the angels. And those are not just fictitious things that fly around with wings. Angels are real. And they are part of God's army of helpers. And they're highly arranged. Even Satan and those that joined him are in a very elaborately organized military type of orders and ranks. And God has those who continue with Him. And the Bible speaks frequently about them. Now, if God created man, He created the angels. If in the purpose of God He needed other beings, certainly they could be. There's no limit to what God can do. But God says the secret things are for the Lord. The things that are revealed are for us, and He will make us understand them. But He doesn't tell us everything that He's ever done. Well, I hope that was interesting to you, and we might learn something of the majesty and the power and the beauty of God's character.